somewhere in California right now, a fault is closer to breaking than it was 6 months ago. Not because of anything you can see, not because of pressure from deep inside the earth, but because of something happening on the surface, something that follows the calendar. Scientists have just confirmed what many suspected for years but could never prove. California earthquakes have a season, and once you understand why, you will never look at a rainy winter the same way again. For as long as people have studied earthquakes, one idea has stood like a wall. Earthquakes are random. They come from forces so deep, so vast, so far beyond human reach, that trying to find a pattern in them was considered almost foolish. The tectonic plates grind. The stress builds over decades. And one day, without warning, a fault snaps. That was the story. That was the science. And for the most part, it is still true. But there was always a whisper underneath that story. A handful of researchers kept noticing something strange in the data. When they lined up thousands of small earthquakes across the years, the quakes did not fall evenly across the calendar. They clustered. Certain months carried more of them than others. It was subtle. It was easy to dismiss as noise, but it kept showing up, year after year, refusing to go away. The question was simple, and it was maddening. What could possibly reach down into a fault and nudge it? On a schedule? The answer, it turns out, was not below the fault at all. It was above it, and it was falling from the sky. To understand what a team at the California Institute of Technology discovered, you have to stop thinking of the ground as solid. It is not. The crust of the earth behaves a little like a mattress. Press down on it, and it sinks, just slightly. Take the weight away, and it lifts back up. We are talking about movements measured in millimeters, invisible to the eye. But faults do not care about what your eye can see. Faults respond to stress, and even the smallest change in the load pressing down on California can shift the balance on a fault that was already close to its breaking point. So, what is the weight that presses down on California and then lifts away over and over every single year? Water. Every winter, storms roll in off the Pacific. Rain soaks into the sedimentary basins. Snow piles up across the Sierra Nevada, sometimes tens of feet deep. Reservoirs fill. Groundwater rises. And all of that water has mass, an enormous, staggering amount of mass, spread across the entire state. That water pushes down on the crust, bending it by a tiny amount. Then, through the dry spring and the long, hot summer, the snow melts, the water drains, the groundwater is pumped out for farms and cities, and the load lifts away. The crust slowly rebounds. California is being loaded and unloaded every year, like a scale that never stops moving, and the faults beneath it feel every ounce of it. Now, here is where the new research changes everything. Because for years, scientists could see the water. They could see the crust bending. What they could not prove was the connection, that this seasonal rhythm was actually reaching the faults and changing when earthquakes happen. Correlation is easy to find. Proof is hard. And without the mechanism, it was just another whisper. The Caltech team, working in the laboratory of geophysicist Jean-Philippe Avouac, decided to settle it. And what they found was more precise and more unsettling than anyone expected. Their study, published in the journal Science Advances in early 2026, did not just confirm that California has a seismic rhythm. It identified what actually drives it. And the key was not the amount of water sitting on the crust at any moment. It was the rate of change, how fast that water was arriving or leaving. The faster the groundwater levels shifted, the more the seismic activity climbed. It was not the weight. It was the speed of the weight moving. And that single detail cracked the whole thing open, because it meant the danger was not spread evenly across the state. It was concentrated where the water swings hardest and fastest. And that is where the map of California starts to divide in two. In the northern part of the state, groundwater levels are wild. They surge in the wet season and drop sharply in the dry one. The swing is dramatic. And so, according to the study, the seasonal stress on northern faults is far more pronounced. The rhythm is loud there. The faults feel the calendar more sharply. In the drier south, the swings are gentler. The seasonal signal is quieter. But quieter does not mean silent. And this is where you have to remember which fault runs through Southern California. The one that everyone fears. The one they call the big one in waiting. The Southern San Andreas has been locked and loading for well over 3 centuries. When a fault is that close to the edge, it does not need a shove. It needs a nudge. The smallest tip of the scale. So sit with the uncomfortable question the research raises. If a fault is already near failure and a subtle seasonal stress can push a population of quakes toward rupture, then the timing of the next great California earthquake might not be as random as we always believed. It might carry a fingerprint, a season. Now, before you circle a month on your calendar, there is something crucial you need to hear. And it is the part that separates real science from fear. The researchers were careful, and they were honest. This effect is real, but it is modest. The seasonal cycle does not cause earthquakes out of nothing. It cannot take a quiet fault and make it dangerous. What it does is nudge the timing of faults that were already loaded to the brink by the slow, relentless grind of the tectonic plates. The plates build the gun over centuries. The season, at most, influences the moment the trigger is pulled. And even then, only slightly. The lead author, Kritanan Siraratanakul, put the boundary plainly. Earthquakes still cannot be predicted. This work does not hand anyone a crystal ball. What it hands scientists is something quieter but arguably more powerful, a clearer view of the physics, a better model of how a fault actually nucleates a quake, a window into the exact forces that tip a fault from stable to slipping. And there is a second discovery buried in this one, and it may be the most important of all. Because water does not only arrive from the sky, it is also removed by us. The same study points directly at human hands. When we pump groundwater out from beneath farms and cities, when we drain reservoirs, when oil and gas operations pull fluids out of the rock sitting directly on top of a fault, every one of those actions changes the load. Every one of them changes the rate. Which means human beings are not just bystanders to California's seismic rhythm. We are quietly playing a part in it. We are, in the smallest of ways, our own hand on the scale. And most people have no idea we are even touching it. Think about what that connects. The drought years, when the state pumps groundwater harder than ever to survive. The wet years, when the snowpack towers over the Sierra and then vanishes in a single hot spring. The reservoirs we fill and empty on our own schedule. All of it feeds into the same delicate balance of stress on faults that already hold the power to level cities. We spend so much energy staring downward into the deep earth, waiting for the plates to move. And this research quietly turns our eyes back up. To the rain, to the snow, to the wells, to the sky, to the surface of the world we actually live on. That is where a piece of the answer was hiding the entire time. So the next time a long, wet California winter finally breaks and the snowpack begins to melt and the ground beneath the state slowly, invisibly starts to rise, remember what is happening underneath. The faults are feeling it. The scale is tipping. The rhythm is turning over into its next beat. The big one will still come from the deep, from 300 years of locked and building strain. No season changes that. But the exact moment it finally arrives, that may belong in some small and haunting part to the water, to the calendar, to the season almost no one knew California had until now. Here is what I want to know from you. If scientists could tell you that certain months carry even a slightly higher risk in your region, would you want to know? Or would you rather not? Tell me in the comments. And if you are watching from California, tell me where. I want to see how many of you are standing on top of this rhythm right now.